We're going to switch over to our interview with Matt Collings. Matt, I've got you here live
Hi.
on Wise Up. Hey, good to see you.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for taking the time with us today, getting set up in advance so that we can have everything running smoothly.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on. It's great to be here, telling you guys about what we're up to.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk about Igniter a bit today. We're going to talk about Krotos. Let's start there. Like, what's the exciting thing? Where did it start? Where did this idea come from? And a little bit about what it is that Krotos does, kind of generally speaking.
So, yeah, Krotos, we're an audio company based in Edinburgh, in Scotland, in the UK. Company started about 5 years ago. It was started by Orpheus, whose master's project was basically a monster design system, which soon became the product Dehumanizer, which some of you may know.
Mm-hmm.
So we went through various versions of that. Started off as a Max MSP created beast, and grow up into a full VST AAX plugin. And after we did Dehumanizer, which has been a very successful product, particularly in games and post production, we moved on to other series of products for the same market, really trying to change the way that people approach sound, trying to change the way that people perform sound, trying to make it faster, easier, more inspiring, and really trying to come at audio technology with a different kind of spin. So all the products that we make and all the approaches that we have are generally based around trying to solve a particular workflow problem or challenge, or trying to do something a little bit differently, hopefully make that workflow a bit better. So for instance, Dehumanizer is a all-in-one solution for creatures, dialogue processing, and basically anything you might want to do to create a character. We then went on and we built the Reformer technology, which is now a patented technology, which is really exciting. So that's basically allows you to perform any pre-recorded sound library with your voice or with another input, which kind of really changes the way that you can use sound libraries, both from us or from your own library, which is really, really cool. We then went on to build a product called Weaponizer, which was an all-in-one system for doing weapons for games, post-production as well. After that, we then built Igniter as a VST plugin. So this is a vehicle design system. So everything from everyday vehicles to sports cars, sci-fi vehicles, helicopters, planes, all this type of stuff, all within one workflow. Rather than having lots of different plugins, lots of different sound libraries, all this stuff, do it all within one place, make it nice and easy, make it automatable, make it controllable. And now, very recently, we've made a version specifically for game audio and for Wise, which is what I'll be showing you today. So this is called Igniter Live. So if you search for Igniter, you might come up with the plugin version. So this is a slightly different name.
So we're going to jump into that in a second. I want to back it up a bit. Again, a lot of the tools that you've created are across industry, both available in a DAW for offline processing, as well as the set of tools that you've been bringing to runtime plugins. And they're all kind of rooted in synthesis and a kind of procedural audio. And coming from the Max MSP and academic background, I think that there's something interesting to me there about the bespoke tools that solve a particular workflow solution. And I wanted to spin this video talking about Dehumanizer a bit. We got this great video from Mark Esdale talking through how he was using Dehumanizer live in the studio. Let's take a look at that.
I could squish you with my left jaw.
And what we're doing is actually taking the character and letting them live in the world. And you get these first takes that are gloriously subtle and interesting and surprising because they're actually living in the moment. So you've got monsters, you've got all the movement, and then bringing in the voice with the Dehumanizer. I'd have it all there. Oh, it's fantastic because you know what you're doing is that you see a big monster, you're going to play this big monster, and you know the normal thing is, oh yeah, we're going to post-process it. But actually, yeah, doing that processing in real time is amazing because you get, you know, actors going, "Yeah, I'm going to be a big monster," you know, and actually when you put the effects on, it just changes them. They go, oh, I can be a big monster like this, and it sounds monstrous.
So I think the cool thing about that clip, and he's talking about, you know, leveraging Dehumanizer in the studio, leveraging it at runtime, is that he can get the performance out of an actor in real time. And,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's super powerful to have that. And so in addition to, you know, that studio side, we also have Dehumanizer over in Wwise at runtime as a plugin.
That's right, yeah. So we ported over a lot of the dehumanizer technology. Unfortunately, not all of it could be optimized to run at runtime, but as much as of it as we could. And that's been used in VR experiences and in games as well. At runtime, people using it in Wwise. That's just part of their Wwise workflow, which is really exciting to see as well.
So, and we'll be talking more about, you know, this runtime, what that really means. But from your standpoint, what is the strength of the runtime side of the Krotos plugins in Wwise?
Well, I think the way that we think about designing audio products is really inspired by a lot of things that are going on in game audio, and some of the things that we've done have been sort of taking those approaches and bringing those over towards post-production workflow as well. Because so you know, Weaponizer, for instance, the way that game audio handles weapon design and implementation is, of course, is traditionally very different to the way that it's done for post-production, and it's also very different from the way that vehicles are handled, which is what we're going to look at today. So both Weaponizer and Igniter, I think, are great examples of the way in which we've been inspired by game audio approaches and to take those approaches into a different arena. You know, just thinking about the way that runtime audio can inspire other approaches to a problem, and then once you've done that, you can then take that technology over to a runtime environment likewise, really quite easily, really.
Yeah, and it's that parameterization piece, I think, where you have a piece of the game engine that's actually driving the sound in the plugin that really gives that flexibility to hook into what the game is doing dynamically and make modifications to the sound in response to that.
Yeah, it's also, I think it's like an inherent performability to non-linear media. So if you think about games as a kind of performance, you know, like every time you interact with a game, the audio system is essentially doing a performance because it's different every time. It relates to the input, relates to the player in the same way that a performer relates to their instrument. So the way that we approach audio products is in the same light. You know, it's saying, let's take a production process that may be very static, very boring, very based on editing lots of pre-recorded things, for instance, like Reformer, and taking that and changing it, putting it on its head, being that, you know, I can just take a microphone and perform a sound effect really instinctively, rather than having to edit stuff and put it back together again. And the same with Igniter. It makes vehicles a performable thing now in post and also in Wwise.
Right, and that performance information, like from the game side, it exists, right?
Exactly.
There's an intense amount of simulation going on in the case of vehicles, in the case of weapons, in the case of dialogue, or in the case of vocalizations from an animation or a model, right?
Definitely.
Bringing those to the synthesis, bringing those to the simulation of the audio, just leverages what is already there a lot of times.
Yeah, I think that the worlds are starting to merge as well. You know, particularly if you look at what Unity and Unreal are doing with, you know, live capture and, you know, the sort of virtual sets that people are building, and the investment in that technology, and particularly the interest for CGI and animation studios. You know, the worlds of linear and non-linear media are starting to merge, which is really exciting, like technologically, and also really exciting for us as a company because that's the perfect synergy of what we do. So it's an exciting time for us and for the industry, I think.
Yeah, and for us as well at Audio Kinetic, it's great to have you as a plugin partner. Let's take a look at Igniter.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so Igniter is a source plugin in Wwise, and it's basically an all-in-one solution for vehicles. So it is a granular system, but it's also a loop system and a combination of the two in the same plugin. And it also includes a synthesizer plugin as well, which is a really powerful and extensive synth as well, which is also available to be licensed outside of the rest of the plugins. You can get the synth just on its own as well if you want. If you want to do something for music system or some special effects system at runtime. So the whole package is available as a bundle or as individual elements. And of course, as some of you be familiar with custom vehicle systems, you often have a dedicated analysis tool or authoring tool for the content that will then go into the plugin. So those of you who've used Rev will be familiar with the same concept. So basically, when you add Igniter Live to your project through the Wwise launcher, which is now available, because it's live, what you will see when you've added it is this stuff here in the actor mix hierarchy, and you can see things are broken down into categories, which shows off all the different things that the Igniter Live system can do for your project. So, for instance, we've got aircraft here. Open this up. There's a couple of different examples. There's an actual jet, Cessna jet. There's a Booker propeller plane from World War II, I believe, and a Huey helicopter, which everyone will know from countless titles. And then you've got sort of more general cars. You've got an F-150, Honda Civic, a Land Rover Defender, a sort of family SUV. We've also got a really gritty sounding Cold War era sedan, which is one of my favorites. Moving on, you've got a section for larger vehicles. So you've got Mercedes Actros truck. It's actually like a haulage truck, like an 18-wheeler. I actually walk past one every day on my way to work. It's pulled into the back of the supermarket by my house. That thing sounds great. We'll play that in a minute. You've got a tractor as well. You've got a Harley Davidson for motorbikes. And moving down, you've got sci-fi vehicles. So these examples combine the actual granular plugin with the synth plugin to give you an idea of how those things can be combined in a project. And then down the bottom, you've got sports cars, you've got high-end things like Ferraris, Subaru Impreza, stuff like that. So the really nice thing is that the way these assets and containers are set up straight out of the box, as soon as you've installed them with the launcher, is they're ready to go, and they're all hooked up with RTPCs ready to go. So if I play one now, hopefully you can hear some audio, we'll hear one in action, and I'll show how these things are set up and how you can start to get a feel for how it sounds. So this is the Subaru Impreza World Rally. So obviously that's just using the RPM RTPC that we've already set up.
Yeah.
So the way we chose to sort of set up these assets is that when you put this in, you've got a container. The container's got the engine and the exhaust already prepped, already loaded, and then you can use the position RTPC to actually mix between the engine and the exhaust, much like you would in the game with the camera position. So straight out of the box, if you want to just preview what's going on, you can get an idea of how this might sound in game.
Okay, so let's pull back for a second. You've got a bunch of great examples. They're already set up. At the base, Krotos Igniter operates as a source plugin on the sound. And so do you want to maybe just take us to that low level and show us what the interface for that looks like?
Yeah, so the plugin itself looks like this.
Great. So you start by instantiating Igniter as a source on a sound SFX object, and from there you start building outward with these parameters that exist, or the parameters that the game can leverage. So you're highlighting things like RPM and load, which would come from a physics simulation for a vehicle. And then you started talking about positioning. So let's break that down a little bit. I see you stepping through. This is great. So we have a new sound SFX object.
Yes, I've just made one now, and I'll insert the plugin. So yeah, so the examples I had are actually these. When I was opening up these side things, a lot of these are actually containers.
Yep.
So they're already prepped with an engine and an exhaust, and then
Yeah.
we're using that container to blend between them. So actually, if I go to my example, I've already got, so I don't have to insert it. So if I just inserted the single plugin, once I'm there, I can decide what aspect of the vehicle I want to put in. So if I open my little open window, this will be ready. This is all ready to go, and immediately you can pop in anything from any vehicle. So what Ignited Live uses is these proprietary format called Q. So you can see that for each vehicle, there's a Q file for engine and for exhaust. So right now in the Subaru Impreza, so I've got the engine one, so I would just load in, I've got my engine there, the exhaust. So for any of these, if you want to try out something that's already pre-made, you just load those in and away you go. If I go back to my one I was putting together,
Great.
so that let me load in another one just for sake of argument. So let's load up the Harley Davidson. So
Awesome.
that one sounds great just from the exhaust. So I loaded that up straight away. And then the simplest way to get this working is just start the event. And once you've started the event, you just grab the RPM and ramp it up.
Wow, I've heard that on a Saturday night in my neighborhood. It's the worst.
So if I loaded up something else, if I load up the Ferrari engine here as well, maybe that one.
Great.
So both the examples I've just heard are they're ramping up through the RPM range, but they're on load. So it's at maximum load position. So load is basically a term that we talk about in terms of sort of the in layman's terms, I guess it's the amount of I don't know, pressure that you're applying to the engine. Pressure is not the right word, but you understand what I mean. So if you push down on the gas, you're applying more load to the engine, and what you'll find is that engines sound. Each vehicle will sound very different. Each engine will sound very different when it's on and off load, basically. Yep. So if I ramped up, so what I'll do now is I'll ramp up on load, and I'll change the load position down to 0, and I'll come down again. You'll hear it sounds pretty different on the way down to the way up.
Great.
The idea of being off load is if you've taken the vehicle to absolute max and you put your foot off the gas, you would then start to decelerate off load, and each vehicle has a very different sound for that, of course. So what we've done is capture both aspects of that and made that totally controllable and accessible to you via RTPCs.
Yeah, and again, I think that these two parameters are the basic functionality of a vehicle physics simulation.
Yes. Yeah.
And so those come out of the box as part of the plugin. Behind the scenes, there's a little bit more to do in order to connect those to a game engine simulation, and really just adding game parameters, having those game parameters pass from the engine. But by default, as part of the Igniter plugin, those are ready for that to happen, and just out of the box.
Yeah, so the RPM and load, like you said, they would be very, very common things that you pick up from any engine simulation in Unreal, in Unity, in Lumberyard, in whatever you're working with. So another classic one would be camera position. So a classic thing to do would be, your interior. You want to hear more engine mix, you want to hear more exhaust mix if the camera's going to pull back away from the player. So what we've done here to sort of simulate that is we've made a container, and in that container we've got two instances of Igniter Live. One is handling the engine, one is handling the exhaust, and then we've made an RTPC here called IGN eggs position. So that is basically all that's really doing is controlling the mix of this blend container. So we've got the engine, and we can move back and forth. So if you were to look up this example here, to your game simulation, to the engine simulation. You could pick up the RPM RTPC, load RTPC, and then the position RTPC to the camera. So
Great.
if we
Do you want to pop open the blend tracks for that? We can take a look at how that's wired in.
Yeah, so this is basically just saying when we're at on position. So when we're at 0 here, we're actually hearing 100% exhaust, not hearing the engine at all. And as that comes up, you can see that just blend down, so that smoothly you hear less of the exhaust and more of the engine.
Yeah, that's great.
Should we hear that in action?
Totally. Hit it.
So let's return that to 0. I'll put this on load again. So this is the Subaru Impreza. This has got really nice exhaust, so I really like to show you. Okay, so we'll start with the position here, which should be all exhaust. Ramp it up. And now if I switch over the position RTPC, now we'll hear just the engine. And now maybe I'll try and leave it and move back and forth. And back off load as we go back down. And then we can change the position as we go down. So there we go. So
That's
straight
great.
away with those examples with the factory assets, you can kind of play around like that and get a feel for how that vehicle might feel in a game. And those RTPCs are ready and prepared, so you could just put those up to game parameters and away you go.
That's fantastic. And again, like in a game, you've got more hands on the knobs, so to speak, and so
Sure, yeah.
these parameters are dynamically shifting simultaneously.
Yes.
And so you get a clear picture once it hits the game, but having this ability to audition it using these parameters before you get there means that you can tighten up that iteration loop a bit and really just understand how the simulation is working.
Yeah, you can just see if the vehicle's feeling right, or if when you're changing, so if you're designing your own vehicle, you'd be like, are the changes from on to offload, are they right? Are things matching? What does it feel like? If I pull back from the camera, is it still feeling like the vehicle should feel before you have to do all this tons of implementation? You can do that really, really quickly, really nicely.
That's
Yeah.
great. So got all these examples. We took a little stroll through integrating Igniter as a source and looked at some of the base properties for that. But as you have all of these different examples that you can load in and test out of the box, like where does it go next?
Where's it going next? Well, the nice thing about the whole package is that you can go like as deep as you like, or not at all if you don't need to. So the license of Igniter Live comes with all these vehicles that you see here. So there's 17 vehicles across all this category that come with the base license. So you don't have to license any of those individual vehicles. You just get them all, which is great. So depending on the game that you're using, you may already have the vehicles that you want, or you might want to edit them a bit. Or if you're doing a sci-fi one, you might want to play around a bit, spice them up a bit, process them a little at runtime, add the synth in, who knows. But there's so much ready for you there straight off the bat. If you then want to build your own, if you're working on a bigger title, which I'm sure you would if you're on a bigger title, what you're going to want to use is the analysis tool, which I can touch on as well. If you like.
Cool, yeah.
Okay, well, I tell you what, actually, before we do that, I'm just going to run through some of these examples really quickly to see what some of the other vehicles are.
Yeah.
Because, the range across the examples is actually really cool. So we've heard this really, souped up sports car.
Yeah.
Let's listen to something else like an example. So let's listen to the Huey helicopter.
Get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper.
Yeah. There was a
It's a really
game
running
audio
joke we love to
event
make
the other
running
day
things.
online where some folks were watching Arnie movies online. Again, just a great community thing. But yeah, it's a beautiful sounding simulation.
Thank you very much. So another one would be Land Rover Defender, a really big, quite a very muscular, very noisy vehicle. See how we can make that sound. So that little bit. One of my other favourites is the big 18-wheeler, the Actros. Sounds a little bit like this. And we've heard the Harley Davidson. Let's throw in one more.
Well, and what was interesting about that one is, so that's the one that's out back from your house, and again, not just an engine simulation, but actually some metal scraping, some other kind of physics pieces as part of that.
Yeah, so I mean, so basically, all those little rattles and bumps and whirs from straight out from the recording of the engine,
Yeah.
which the recorders captured. So the really nice thing about the Igniter Live system is that you can leave all those things in, and you can still get a convincing vehicle. You don't have to RX the hell out of everything to track it to get a good vehicle. So if you're not working on a high-end sports car title, but you need your vehicles to sound really meaty and really convincing, this is a great solution for you. Because as you can see, we're not just dealing with the sports cars; we're doing like loads and loads of different stuff.
Yeah, it sounded
which is
great.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, that's kind of a quick blast through the different categories of stuff. But yeah, I would urge you to have a quick listen when you get a chance. You can just install the stuff from launcher. But should we take a look at the analysis tool maybe?
Oh, it's going to be fun.
Okay. So the analysis tool is included with the Igniter Live demo. So basically, if you install it from the launcher, you get all these examples I'm talking about. You also get access to the analysis tool for as long as you like, just play around. So you can put your own assets in it, you can edit them, you can adjust them, and then you can export everything you make as packages and pick them up in Wise as we've been doing. The only difference is that you won't be able to put them in game because that's where the license restrictions stop. But as soon as you get your license, you're good. Okay, cool. So this is it. So when you load it up, you can actually open up the projects that we've used to create all the factory assets. So let's say I open up a different vehicle. Actually, no. Let's listen to the Actros, the one we just listened to. Okay.
Great.
So this is the project that we used for it. So you can actually see how it's done, what's happening under the hood, and you could use that to inspire putting your own vehicles together. So it's quite a deep tool. There's a lot there. There's a very big manual and lots of videos and documentation. So I'll try and just breeze through it, and then Damien, if you have any questions, use that to guide us, basically. But yeah, so you can see that each of these tabs here is a section for a different aspect of the vehicle. So within the analysis tool, you can put together idles for the engine, for the exhaust, the onload ramps, the offload ramps for the engine and the exhaust. You put those all together in a single system, and then you can preview them all from the same system, exactly like you can in the plugin. So when you're actually putting these together and you're actually seeing how the recordings sound and feel, you can do that all within the same system. And there's a bunch of other little controls here to customize stuff as you go. So for instance, the one I just hovered over is the fade time for the idle. So you can see like how quickly that comes in.
Nice.
It's displayed there visually. You've got the mix between engine and exhaust, much like we set up with the blend containers, but you've got that in the tool, so you can immediately see how that feels. You also got mixes for the loop system and the granular system. So loop system I haven't really touched on yet. So for instance, the Huey is actually built up a bunch of loops. A lot of the non-combustion engines are actually loop-based. So the loop system for Igniter is actually integrated into the same analysis tool. And there's some really cool features that I'll get to in a bit.
Cool.
The nice thing about that is that enables you to build hybrid granular loop system within the same tool and export them in the same package. And then you can use, how many loops is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 6 loops, and granular stuff at the same time and wrap that up into a single package, and then put that into one voice in Wise.
It's really the
Which is very
best of
cool.
both worlds.
Exactly, and let's
Yeah.
say you like the idle and you like your max revs part, and you want to use those as loops because maybe you feel that comes across better. You can do that, and the rest can be granular or anything else in between.
Yeah.
And also a nice thing about the plugin actually is that you then got access to the loops, the levels, and the pitches of all the loops as well, if you want to. So you might set up a system in the analysis tool, but then you can override it in the plugin in Wise as well if you want to.
Sure.
So you've really got the best of both worlds.
Yeah, again, all parametric, or what's exposed in the plugin is parameterizable and dynamic, can respond to what the game is doing, and yeah, gives you that depth to control it.
So what I thought I might do now is actually put a vehicle together using the analysis tool.
Yeah.
And then we can show some of the cool little features that are available to make these sound as good as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put together a Ferrari. So I'm going to go to the engine idle tab. I'm going to go to my folder where I've got a bunch of assets. So I'll stick in my Ferrari engine idle into the granular engine idle tab and analyze. Up it comes. Just chop this up into grains ready to go.
Let's pull back for a second. Like, we're throwing around this term granular, we're saying grain,
Yep.
we're all super keen on it. However, as a
What is
concept,
that?
how would you describe it at a higher level?
So granular synthesis is basically the idea of you take a section of audio, any audio signal or recording, and you chop it up into lots and lots of tiny little bits, and you play those little bits back in various ways. So typically when you're doing an engine system, a granular system is a good way to go because it's very, very flexible. And it allows you to, so unlike with certain loop implementation systems, you can often get a more realistic sound because you're able to move, sort of scan back and forth through a recording really nicely, really cleanly, and get at any point at it and sort of stop and then move slowly or fast. Well, in a loop system, you might fall down with that because you're quickly going to hear these pitching artifacts. It's less flexible. So this is why the idea of granular synthesis, particularly for engines, was brought together. And it's been around in the industry, particularly with proprietary stuff with various companies for a while. But there's not many solutions that are commercially available. So what Untitled Live does is it takes whatever you put into it, preferably engine ramps, and chops those up into grains and plays them back.
Beautiful.
Preferably the right ones at the right times. But the challenge with engine stuff as well is that you've got different recordings from different positions and different kind of circumstances. So the on and off load thing that we talked about. So this idea of recording an engine when you're accelerating and decelerating. Obviously, that can sound quite different. Another thing about it is that those recordings might actually be very different lengths. Because to record a car decelerating quickly is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Right. So if I open this up in Reaper, you'll see the assets I'm going to put into the tool. So you see the engine acceleration, the on load is here. It's much, much shorter than the deceleration. So there are good reasons for that. And you want to do that because you've got the highest resolution recording from all the different points that this vehicle's doing. And part of the art of there's an art to recording vehicles and there's an art to implementing. So you'll see that. So one of the reasons why granular synthesis is a great solution for this type of thing is that you couldn't just line these up and play them back in sync because they're not the same length.
Right.
It wouldn't work, and they would sound ridiculous. So one of the things that Untitled Live does is that it analyzes the pitch of all the points along these recordings, and then it will give you the correct pitch across both recordings at the right time, or it will adjust it so that they will match. Yeah. So that's one of the strengths of granular synthesis above loops, because that's not possible with loop-based.
Exactly, because you have all these tiny pieces that can be aligned in the different ways that you're talking about, whether it's time aligned or pitch aligned, and then used in conjunction or used in comparison to make a convincing result.
absolutely.
Cool.
So what we'll do now, I'll just keep stepping through and analyzing things as we talk.
Yeah.
So I'm now on the engine onload tab. So basically for each section of the engine, we're just going to put a recording that we already have and we've re-edited. We also give advice on how this should be. Did I hit analyze? Yes, I did. How the best practice for editing this stuff. So we'll see this little bar moving up. So what you'll see in this middle is something we call a heat map, which is basically like a spectrogram of this recording. And you'll see we've got a bunch of lines that start to get drawn through it. So what you'll see now is that we've automatically analysed this and decided that this is the best line we're going to follow. So that's tracking the harmonics, some partials of the recording, and using those as a basis to cut grains, get the best result. So that's this one done. Cool, looking good. I'm going to move on to the offload.
Bam.
I'll just keep going. And a lot of this stuff is being selected sort of automatically, so we don't have to mess with it. It's a really good start. This should already sound pretty good. We'll hear it when I've got the offload. We'll look at it as well. And we'll see some of that sort of pitch matching technique I was talking about.
Yep.
So as you can see, we can't just play them back in sync because one is like 3 times the length.
Yep. And these will all align or at least be visually presented in that vehicle tab at the end of the road. Is that?
That's right. Yeah. So the vehicle tab is your sort of go-to for previewing everything that you've put together.
Great.
Just let it chew on that for a second.
Love it. Yeah. And again, like I think having this pipeline to feed different content through in order to build these engines is a vital piece of it, right? As we started at the 50,000 foot view of the examples that are already in Wwise, we're narrowing down to this, very hands-on process of creating those engines from scratch. It really opens the door for a lot of, limitless experimentation, really, of what you feed the analyzer and what you roll up into your vehicle simulation.
Definitely. Well, let's just see what these two have come out as just straight out of the box. So we've now got an engine onload and offload. So if I use these little controls here just to mix between the stuff we imported and I play it. Okay, so straight away that's sounding pretty good. We can switch to the offload, see what that sounds like. So something else. So what we'll do now, just to see how the two things sound together, is I'll put this mix halfway, so we get both playing the same. So now we know that when the game decides to switch to offload, it will still feel right because it's doing all that automatic matching across the sections of the recording.
And that automatic matching is represented by the green bars when you're auditioning, as it moves across each of the waveforms.
Yeah, and depending on the tracking and a bunch of different things, it will sort of compensate as well. So if something's sort of not right, it will automatically do its best to sort of compensate and make sure they match as much as possible. And then you can also then tweak that to your heart's content. Very wrong. So what I'm going to do now is I'll start to the exhaust, and then you'll quickly start to see that exhausts start to become a little bit more challenging because of just the nature of the recording. So I'm actually going to light on because it's getting quite dark in my room now because it's night right now in Britain.
Matt coming to us from London. I'm here in Seattle. Let us know if you have any questions. We'll circle back to them or try to jump in on them as they come up. And happy to have folks in the chat. Let us know if there's something we can help clarify for you during this.
Okay, cool. So now we can we've got a nice light above me. So we'll see from this that we've got lots of different sized grains here, and I can see and I know from experience that this is probably going to sound a bit wobbly. That's
Gotcha.
not really what we want. We want a nice smooth line. So what we can do is a unique feature to Ignite Live. We hit the edit analysis button. We're going to get a closer view of that spectrogram. So as you can see, we've got these nice clear harmonics. And here we've got a nice good one here. This is going to sound pretty good, but this is kind of difficult. Where maybe this exhaust recording is kind of noisy, it's difficult to track. But by eye, I can see that that's kind of wanting to go in this direction. Right? I want to follow that harmonic. So all I'm going to do is actually click on the right button here, and I'm just going to draw where I want it to go.
Wow.
And then it's going to reanalyze based on what I've drawn, and that should give us a much better result. So this is really good for noisier vehicles. For instance, like the Actros or Land Rover we looked at, like really noisy vehicle. And sort of by eye, as a skilled audio person, you can kind of see where the harmonics go, but sometimes the maths of an analysis system is not perfect and it will miss, or it might miss in places. So this is a fantastic tool to get around those types of analysis problems. Because I've had experience as well with other systems where it might just be unable to handle the vehicle because it can't track, or else you can just draw it and you're away. So now we can see this seems much smoother. There we go. So let's do the offload as well now.
That feels like a super powerful tool for smoothing out the rough edges, like you said. There was a time when I did some implementation and messed around with formants in Melodyne, trying to get things smoothed out, right? And so I recognize like the long way around to making that work well. So seeing that kind of functionality built right in is great. A couple questions from the chat real quick. Question about when the plugin is available. Yeah, right now.
Now.
Bam! Hit the launcher. You can install the plugin through the Wwise launcher. It's ready for you, so follow along at home. And then question kind of on the side, how well does it work with the Wwise virtual voice system? I think we touched briefly on that, and maybe we'll circle back to it at the end when we get back into Wwise. But keep that in mind.
Yeah, we can do that. Cool. Okay, so this is the last recording we need to do. So as you can see, same with the offload, the deceleration recording of this vehicle. Tracking's finding it difficult because, especially with exhaust, you're looking at really low frequencies, especially on really low RPMs. It's difficult to track, but we can see where it needs to go.
Can you give us a audio example of that wobbliness that you're talking about, just so we can hear, maybe even give it to us.
It's going to be the lower RPM section. So let's hear that. It's not really getting it, right?
Yeah.
Here is fine. Yeah, that's not nice. I don't like that. That's not my slick high-end £100,000 Ferrari.
Right?
It's not what I ordered.
That was a perfect illustration of wobbly, exactly.
Cool. So yeah, we can see this part, as we heard, it was tracked well and was handled well, but this part not. So again, I know where it wants to go. That's where it wants to go, right?
Yeah.
As you can see the pattern of it. You can see the pattern of the harmonics rise. So I'll just draw it in, and again, you can be ultra precise with this if you want. I'm just doing this really quickly. As soon as you press OK and the edit analysis, it's going to do another pass on it, which should be starting now. And all this stuff is also really helpful for aesthetic effect as well. If you're doing something non-real world, something sci-fi, and you want to really mess with something, this could be a great tool for that as well.
Put a little burble in the low frequencies. If you have something that sounds too smooth, let's draw in a little bit of warbliness so that it gets a little bit dirty.
Well, some of this stuff as well, especially the matching stuff, could be interesting if you're wanting to do something really weird with like combining different on-loads or off-loads of different vehicles or stuff like that. So let's hear it now, and hopefully it's better. Sounds much better to me.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. So now we've done both. We can now do, just like we did in Wwise with the containers, we can audition the exhaust and the engine and the on and the off. We can in fact hear the on and the off of the exhaust and the engine at the same time. So, and if you find one bit's not right and you want to adjust something, you go back to it, go back here, listen to the whole cohesive system at once before you export it. So let's say now I'm really happy with this one. I think it's going to be good. It's going to go up to File, hit Export Packages. So this is the sort of terminology we use about what comes out of it. And you can choose if you want to export the engine package, just the engine, or just the exhaust, or both. If you want to export the granular aspect or the loop aspect, the gearbox information, so there's an automatic gearbox in here as well, which we may or may not get to. And then also your format, if you want to have compressed ADPCM format as well, if you need to save space.
Great.
So you export.
So this is where you would do your encoding for the samples.
Yeah, so what's happening now is when you export, so if I export an engine package here, what it's going to do is going to take the audio files that I put in for my engine, the on and the offload and the idle, and all the analysis data for that that's needed to play it back in Wwise. I'm just going to wrap it up into one of those Q files that we talked about, place it wherever you want, and then all you need to do is put an instance of the plugin in and load that Q file in, and you're away. Simple as that.
Cool. So the analysis tool really is, a synthesizer for engines where you have access to just a ton of control over the playback and synthesis of these sounds, both granularly with the loop-based system. This is really kind of the nuts and bolts of building your vehicle by hand.
Yeah.
Once you've built it, it goes into Wwise, exported as a Q file, and
That's right.
and then becomes the kind of thing that is accessible through parameters that can be passed to the game.
That's right, yeah. So what I was going to show you now is actually building a loop-based vehicle and see what the system can do, because there's quite a lot of kind of cool things it can do for that as well.
Great.
So what I was going to do is I was going to build up a 3-loop jet.
Ooh.
And we'll put this together pretty quickly. So you can put, how many is that? 6 different loops in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in these pre-cut loops from the jet recording. And as you can see, all these doing some crazy stuff here. So what's that doing? We'll get to that in a second. So the point of a loop system is it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you of putting loop systems together. So if you're going to put like loop systems, usually you might use fixed RPM recordings, certain RPM stages or certain stages of an aircraft or whatever, and then you would crossfade over them with amplitude crossfades, but also pitch crossfades, because you want the pitch of each one to rise and to coincide nicely, to come smoothly all the way up and all the way down. Okay? So that would be the way you'd usually do it. In Wwise, you'd usually use a blend container and do this all by hand. Yeah. Okay, so I've turned off all the pitching stuff. So what we should get, hopefully, is 3 loops at different pitches. Okay, that's not sounding like an aircraft, is it?
I mean,
Some loops.
it's moving real quick.
That's right. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the pitching controls, and I can see that. So what it's doing is analyzing the frequency, the fundamental frequency of each loop, just kind of like similar to what we did to granular.
Yeah.
So I can see that it's done that, but we've got these lines show you the pitch transitions, and you generally want those to be quite smooth and subtle. So we can see this one's gone a bit bananas. That's okay. We're going to fix that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this feature called Override Fundamental on all of these. And I'm basically going to fix, or I'm going to suggest what the pitch could be. And, just follow me as I go through it. It will make sense. Okay. So I'm going to say this one is not 1,684 hertz, because I don't think it is. And it's difficult the pitch track's going to be so noisy like that. I'm going to tell it it's 130 hertz. And you see these lines start to adjust.
Yep.
So I'm going to say this one is maybe 160. It says it's 166. Okay, so this one it's saying 1,646. It's probably too high. It's going to sound a bit nuts. So I'm going to say 180. Okay. So what's happening now is I'm to put these sort of relative pitches in place. Okay. So now what we should find is that these will now pitch across one another. Let's see what that sounds like. So that's happened automatically, which is good, but still not quite right.
Way smoother though.
Way smoother, right? Sounds a bit more like a vehicle. So this red line is basically the center of that loop, right? It's it's going to reach that pitch at this point in time. And when I drag that, I can now click on the end point of that loop and drag it. So now it's going to automatically recalculate the volume crossfades and the pitch crossfades.
Got it.
Across that range. So now it's going to sound much smoother. So let's smooth that up. So now we're going to have a much smoother rise. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to make two more little adjustments. So you can tell at the beginning it's not pitching up right at the very beginning. So I'm going to say make that 120, and I make the end 100. So it's going to pitch up at the beginning and the end. Okay, so this should be done now. There we go. There's
Fantastic.
A jet in 3 minutes.
Well, I'm a fan of just watching your process here, right? Where you go through, you drop your waves in, Igniter does a bit of magic. It tries to anticipate your intentions. It probably nails it on some occasions. And when it doesn't, what are the knobs that you reach for? What are the strategies that you employ? I think that's really the value of being able to step through this in a hands-on experience, because it's that process that is hard to expose through a manual. It's hard to get
Sure.
that. And so I really value being able to see your process through that.
Well, yeah, I mean, hopefully that's been enlightening, and hopefully that gets people excited of, oh, wow, that makes that part of my life really easy. Well, before it was kind of arduous.
Well, for people
Hopefully.
who have authored engines in the past, I imagine this feels like a potential breath of fresh air. Having had to dig into, various tool sets or techniques to prepare content for a system. As you mentioned, you could build a loop-based system in middleware, for the last 5 or 10 years, as we have, for games in the past. However, it's that speed of execution, it's the fidelity of parameterization that's built into Igniter that really makes it a workflow speed up. As well as just a quality speed up because of the technology that is underneath the hood, right?
Yeah, and I mean, the bottom line is, all we're trying to do is make great sounding stuff for people and help them make it as fast as possible. Spoken to people working on titles, and they're saying, "Oh, I've got to make 100 vehicles for this title." That's crazy. That's an enormous amount of work, and I think it'd be quite easy to justify, a small, spend on something that's going to save you literally days of your work, getting stuff into the project, having it sounding great, and allowing you to focus on other stuff.
Totally. So a couple good questions from the chat coming in. Trash Dinner, what's the difference between what you can do and can't do in Igniter versus the standalone version?
So the plugin version.
And I think that's the DAW plugin side. This is, yeah.
So at the moment, the two systems are not compatible with one another,
Sure.
unfortunately.
What's the big difference from an authoring perspective, would you say?
Well, from an authoring perspective, there's some really cool stuff that we just looked at with the loop system in terms of automatic pitch detection and transition handling that are not in the VST version.
Gotcha.
Also, with this version, the analysis tool allows you to import your own assets into the granular system and author those, which you can't do in the VST version, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I would say those are the two biggest differences.
So there's no analysis tool pipeline for the VST side of Igniter.
Not at the moment.
It's only this runtime Wwise pipeline that allows you to get deep under the hood with that technology.
Yeah. Yes, and there are various reasons for that, but I mean, one of them was that game projects are usually the ones that really want to alter their own vehicles in this much detail.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we went in that direction.
Yeah.
But more and more people are asking us that about the VST, and that's something we're definitely looking into.
Cool. We got another question here from Tiomanakiv in the chat room looking for an example of a not really noisy engine sound on a pretty stable RPM using the granular part of the plugin. So something that is a little cleaner sounding. Do you have a good example we can point to?
Yeah, sure. Let me try one of the other sports cars.
Thanks for the questions in the chat room today. Thanks.
So let's try the Porsche Carrera. So especially on engine, this one is pretty clean. Let's see what it sounds like. That was pretty loud.
I mean, I got albums of music that sound just like that, so I'm not even breaking a sweat over here. But that sounded great. And honestly, if you want to dig deeper into what comes out of the box with Igniter Live, it's available for you to download, install, and audition right out of the box. So definitely dig right in and take a listen to what's there.
Almost everything that I've done, you can do straight out of the box in Wwise. So auditioning all this stuff, messing around with the stuff in the analysis tool, looking at it, you can do immediately, like now. You can just install it and do it. So if you want to audition more stuff and explore, or if you've got your own assets and you want to try them out, then you can absolutely do that straight away.
Brilliant. Matt, it's great to have Igniter as part of the suite of tools working at runtime in Wwise. Thanks for bringing Igniter to the ecosystem and to users of Wwise everywhere to try out. It's great to get the deep dive. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. If anyone has any other questions after the chat, you can hit me up on the support through our website as well, on krotosaudio.com, and we'll answer all your questions best we can.
Awesome. So here it has been another fine Wwise Up hands-on. Again, thanks Matt, thanks Krotos, thanks to everyone for dropping by. Great questions in the chat room. I hope everyone's keeping it easy out there, finding their way through this world, and appreciate you dropping by. See you on the other side. Take care.
Thanks, guys.